Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at uranium energy. It is time for another update, and today we will be discussing the reversal that has formed to the upside from this local low, and we have managed to predict quite accurately when we should have been expecting a low to form in this area, and this has been quite nice. We have been looking ever since, failing to create here the 5-wave move to the upside. We were looking for another extension lower, and this structure we managed to see play out quite accurately as we were going along with it. Now, before we get there, I would like to go quickly through the larger time frame for any of you who might be new. And currently on this chart, we are still able to track this as a series of 1-2 setups that have formed over in this area, but then we would expect to form a third wave to the upside. Now, based on the internal patterns that have developed within this structure, there is quite a problem with tracking this movement for a larger third wave to the upside. It is possible also in even more than one scenario, but it isn't necessarily a preferred interpretation to actually have already started the third wave itself. Yeah, in the best case, the most probable interpretation would be where this would be a larger wave one that would form in a leading diagonal, and that is what we have been tracking here in the white scenario. But in the end, it could be an overall ending of a larger wave one, in which case we would need to be prepared for a quite significant correction once we form here this additional high, even below a correction even below the beginning of this entire uptrend that has formed over in this year. Now, with that said, we also have still available to us a hyper bullish scenario where this would be the third wave itself, where really the only way I can track such an interpretation would be where I would consider this as a series of 1-2 setup in this case, or 1-2 setups, and it isn't necessarily a high probability interpretation. Yeah, it is a bit of hopium scenario, and I don't want to dismiss this possibility, but I also don't want you to get too infatuated with this idea of a series of 1-2 setups where we should follow here into a third wave to the upside, because while it is possible, it isn't a high probability interpretation. Now, with that said, here into this area, or actually I want to make out one more point, and it is that even though this structure isn't necessarily going to play out exactly as we were tracking it, we still managed to have great success in developing this structure to the upside, because it isn't that within these patterns we have a predetermined outcome. Yeah, the market sentiment changes, the outcome, the expectations for a company change, and as those do, the patterns change themselves. Because when we were here within this movement to the upside, we had quite a nice structure, we had quite a nice movement for a wave 3. We were tracking this as a third wave up. We had enough of a movement here even in this third wave, and we could have gotten here a fourth and then a fifth and then another 4-5, and we would have had an impulse to the upside in a wave 1. It wouldn't have necessarily been as strong, but it would have been an impulse, a more clear pattern, and with more clear determined outcomes. Such diagonal patterns actually suggest more uncertainty than not, even if they do sometimes show up in such strength. Yeah, and we had great success tracking this area, and I'm not upset about anything about it, because yeah, we had probably like 10 or 11 trade setups that were extremely successful in this overall uptrend, with the first one being here for a 1-2 setup, which was an actual opportunity where we got into the area of support, and anyone who would have tracked this channel would have been able to get an entry in this area if they were interested for this entire rally to the upside, where only when we got to the $13.8 level were we actually starting to look for a possible top. Or not even possible, probably a more likely top, because the market can do what it wants, and we do also always track possible completions of patterns earlier than not, yeah, to be prepared for such interpretations. But we were looking for quite a sizable move from the very beginning overall on this chart. Now, with that said, in this area we have gotten quite deep into the support levels. In the blue scenario specifically, we have gotten below the 78.6% retracement in a couple of weeks only. Yeah, this time it was just a week, and then we had only an opening that was immediately recovered into or from the pre-market trading. But we have overall touched here the 50% retracement from the white interpretation, and we have quite a high probability of having a bottom in place within this structure, where we have been tracking this movement to the downside as an overall ABC movement, and within this wave C we were able to only have more confidence in a bottom being formed after forming this local low, yeah? And we got here another low, but this was all just fine. We were expecting possible extensions lower, and we determined that at this point we had a full count. We didn't need any more lows, and it was only extensions that were something that we were watching out for to the downside at that point, because otherwise we would have been able to consider a low in place and start looking for the next wave up. Now, within this area, in the previous video, we had some resistance and support levels to be tracked, and we were looking specifically here at the 78.6% retracement, which we pushed basically into, and we were looking for a break above this level for a clear signal that this structure to the downside is likely done and that we shouldn't expect further extensions lower. And clearly, we have pushed a couple of times into this level, and when we managed to clearly break it, we had our continuation here to the upside in a very sizable increase in momentum, yeah? Here we pushed above this level, we tested it again, and then we pushed back up since we managed to hold here above the level of support. You see how relevant these levels are. Now, unfortunately, on the support side, we didn't manage to get even to the first level of support, which, yeah, it happens at times, and it isn't necessarily a good sign or a bullish sign for the chart. It is generally better to get into those areas of support and build more clear structures, but sometimes it happens and it isn't the case. But nothing we can really do about it, and I have to say it does hurt a little bit my expectations, or not necessarily expectations, but probably the reliability I find given to us by this overall pattern to the upside. Now, with that said, we can now remove these levels. We don't need them anymore, and we are focusing here strictly on this overall move to the upside, where we have a couple of options, because I can consider this the actual low. Yeah, it makes sense in a lot of cases to consider this the actual bottom, and we could be looking here at a 1-2 setup, and then we could be forming here a third wave to the upside. But from this low, we only have a 3-wave structure. In that case, I need to be prepared for also an ABC pattern to only unfold here in this wave 3, and I would be overall looking to form either a larger ABC, where sure, this could be a 5-wave move to the upside, or a larger leading diagonal in a larger wave A. In the case of the leading diagonal, we expect here the ABC. In the case of the ABC structure itself, we expect here a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Depending on how this develops, we may have more information to work with, but for now, we need to be patient and take it level by level. The main aspect is that we don't necessarily have the high reliability for tracking a 1, 2, 3 in this area, and we need to be very much aware that after we get a full ABC pattern, we may not hold here a follow-up correction in a wave 4 and get a 5th wave to the upside. Whereas if this is indeed a wave 3, we should see a 4th and a 5th to follow. Now, I will have to track both interpretations, but right now they are identical, and I will be focusing here on a third wave to the upside internally, as long as we manage to hold the levels of support for an impulse forming in this area. And if I were to be looking here at some ideal targets, we could be tracking them for a wave C as well, but we have honestly already gotten very, very close to the 100% extension, and even if this is to develop as a wave C, I wouldn't necessarily expect it to stop there based on the momentum that is ongoing in this area. Now, I'm not saying something more sudden, a more sudden failure could not come out, and we will be tracking relevant areas of support to tell us that, but we need to be prepared to see a further extension even in the wave C, where honestly, for the third wave, I am looking at the 138.2% extension. Well, I could see something very similar play out even for the wave C in this area, which is why I was alluding to the idea that, yeah, after we get here the next wave up, we may not get the 4th and the 5th, because we may not know that this is a wave C or a wave 3, because in both cases, we may end up far beyond the ideal target for the wave 3. Now, before we get here into the small time frame for the first levels of support, I want to discuss here a bit the larger time frame. And for resistance, we don't have anything too specific. We can track a more generic area of resistance for a possible larger extension in an ABC pattern, and that would be at the levels between the $12.5 all the way up to the $15.7, where a break here above the 78.6% retracement would be quite positive for the bullish case. But I would mostly focus here on the structural resistance levels for areas to watch out for that could prove more difficult to actually break. And here, firstly, I would watch here at the levels between here the $13.8 all the way up to the, let's say, $14.4 level. Yeah, in this area we have quite significant tops that have formed. It has been a struggle to get past those levels before, but even more so we need to watch out here at this peak, which is very much in line with the 138.2% extension of this supposed wave 1. Yeah, I can actually even draw it again to make it more apparent, more clear. But for the 138.2% extension, we were looking here at the $15 level or so. Here we are looking at a peak at the $15 level of or so. Yeah, very much in line. This is a level to watch out for a possible larger correction afterwards, although based on the internal strength to the upside, I could easily see us get in this wave 3 to the 161.8% retracement or extension, which is very much in line with the 78.6% retracement and also some additional structural resistance in these areas. Yeah, we also see these peaks. These are levels we want to watch for a possible larger correction. Now, based on the internal strength, as I was mentioning, we will discuss this. Based on the internal strength that we have in this area, I so far only see this as the third wave up. Yeah, and not even this looks complete to me. We may even need to go here in the smaller time frame. But I am basically tracking within this third wave to the upside a larger series of 1-2 setups that have formed in this area, and those seem actually quite decent, quite reliable. But then I would consider this a possible third wave, although yeah, it seems to be still going even at this point. So the area of support that I will give you in this area won't be necessarily too high impact, because yeah, I expect this movement to extend even higher. And if I were to be looking here for a possible third wave target, yeah, we would have already surpassed the 161.8% extension of the wave 1. And yeah, it is unfortunate I cannot give you something more for the long term in this area, something to look out for the next correction. But at this point we seem to be extending directly higher, and the best level I can actually give you right now here is the area of support between the $13.6 all the way down to the $13.2, where if we break here below this 50% retracement without forming any additional highs here in this wave 3, it would be a grave signal that this overall structure, this overall impulse to the upside is going to fail, and that we should be prepared for something possibly quite bearish. Now, I won't go through all the possible scenarios, of course, but yeah, it would have quite bearish implications here if we don't manage to hold at least the 50% retracement for a correction in wave 4. And as we push higher, still within this wave 3, the area of support would need to adjust. So maybe you can do this yourself if you want to check it live. But right now we are looking at support down to the $13.2 level. And for now, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day. Apologies. I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.